Shock Monkey Radio is entertainment for adults, by adults, and the views and opinions expressed here do not reflect upon the sponsors or FXBG Public Radio. For additional information, please refer to the United States Bill of Rights. Stand warned. Hello and welcome to Shock Monkey Radio. I am your host, the Madman. How are you doing today? So, I had a dream last night. I had a dream that Disney bought the intellectual property rights for the Ash Evil Dead series and put out a movie called Bedknobs and Boomsticks. All right, where Ash goes flying around with three posh little English kids during the Nazi occupation. All right, killing zombies and witches. So I don't know if that was a nightmare. It could have been a nightmare, could have been a dream, could have been a brilliant idea for a movie, Disney. You're welcome. Anyway, so yes, this is Shock Monkey Radio, and I want to remind you that you can email me here at madman@fxbgpr.com, and you may end up in our mailbag, and I could respond to your questions. You can remain anonymous if you like. Just say so in the email, and I'll keep you anonymous. I also want to remind you that today is my mother's birthday, and she didn't get a present today because you have not gone over to patreon.com/shockmonkeyradio and become a patron. For $3 a month, you get access to all of our video content behind the paywall, and I would appreciate it. And my mother would too. Okay, if you don't want to become a patron, you can just send me cash through the Cash App. Use the cash tag Shock Monkey Radio. So I want to talk about Bill Burr's monologue on Saturday Night Live because it created a little bit of a fuss. A little bit of a fuss. Here's the thing. It's like, what do you really expect from Bill Burr? All right. Do you expect him to toe the leftist line? All right. Just for the approving clapter he's going to get, you know, I know that Bill Burr's gone soft since he got married. You know, I know he's turned a little left and he's gotten a little soft, and I don't really like it about Bill Burr. I stopped listening to the Monday Morning Podcast or whatever. Because it's you know, who cares? I don't want to keep up with your family. I need to keep up with my family. So, I've kind of like, even in Paper Tiger, he's a little too far left for my taste. But here's the thing: he is still a comedian, and comedy is supposed to challenge our social mores, or else it will fail to be funny. And Bill Burr understands that. Okay, I don't agree 100% with Bill's perspective about these quote-unquote touchy topics, but I don't let that get in between me and a good laugh. The problem with all these people getting bent out of shape over Burr's SNL monologue are the people that have no sense of humor about themselves. No one should take themselves too seriously. And if you can't laugh at yourself, you are fucked in life. You will do nothing but grow more angry and bitter and unable to relate to everyone else in the world. One day you will wake up and find yourself looking for ways to get angry during your amusement time. And that's what SNL is. SNL is amusement time. And I know SNL is biased. I know that, just like I know Jon Stewart is biased. But I refused to let their bias stand between me and a laugh. America, you need to lighten the fuck up. From the masks, to the riots, to the election, to your social media. Chill the fuck out. Things are not that serious. Now, when I made this comment, the illustrious comedian Scott Wharton had to chime in, of course, and he said, he didn't find it funny at all because it was basically recycled premises. Premises. And if you follow Bill Burr, it's like, yeah, these are kind of like old hat for him in many ways. This is kind of, if you follow a comedian on the road from gig to gig and stuff like that, and then you see their special at the end of the year, you're like, oh, I've heard it all before. You know, I was there listening to him perfect these jokes. All right. And I said that, SNL is a perfect place for recycled premises. And I think Bill Burr knew that too. And so he just took that best of what he had at hand and went on there and did a couple jokes. Just a couple of jokes. And you know what? He's the kind of guy that understands that, people are going to get, bent out of shape. People are, no matter what you say, as a bald white ginger, somebody's going to take offense that you're even up there holding a microphone. And I told Scott that if SNL is the perfect place for recycled premises. And he said many of the typical audience may not have heard him talk about those topics. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly my point. You know, it's like people don't follow him. They just see him when he's in that venue. You know, and so it's just like having a guest on, like if Tim Pool has a guest on who's, say, you know, leader of the Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio. All right, there's going to be haters there's going to be haters in the comments. There's going to be haters in the chat stream. That's just how it works, you know. Because, you know, it's a different venue. You know, people, you know, some people are just there to be haters. Some people, that's all they want to do is to be haters. You know, I remember back in the day, on, you know, in early Facebook usage of mine, and even before that, message boards. You know, there would be people who would scour through the rantings of a madman like me to find one little sentence or one little clip and take it out of context, intentionally take it out of context, and not understand the joke, and say, that right there, that's why you're a somethingist, racist, sexist, whateverist. All right? So I think that no matter what Bill Burr had said on that stage, we could have just stood up there and been silent for 10 minutes. And they still would have something to say. They still would have to have something to say because haters going to hate. So Johnny Rotten is a MAGA guy. So this came out in the news this week, and I think this is a really interesting conversation to have. And because Johnny Rotten came out as a Trump supporter, since he came out of the closet, as it were, as a Trump supporter, people have been losing their minds, you know, and it's because of their warped worldview. In their warped worldview, punk rock is leftist. That's the way they think. And although that may have been true in the early days of punk, in the late 70s and early 80s, it is not true today. When punk first came out, it aligned on the liberal side because the religious right was telling people what they shouldn't be recorded on records. You know, what shouldn't be available in a record store. What you should and shouldn't listen to. Which de facto placed punk rock on the left. But punk has always been of the attitude, fuck you, you can't tell me what to do. And here, in 2020, who is the party trying to tell you what to do? Who is telling you that you have to wear a mask? Who is telling you that you have to shelter in place at home? Who are the power junkie establishment assholes trying to control everyone's lives? That's the left. And they are so crazy with power that they cannot even see that they are the culture. And punk was always counterculture. So in 2020, there is nothing more punk rock than being a Trump supporter. The real problem is the arrogance of the left in assuming that punk rockers will vote their party line, or assuming that blacks should vote their party line, or Latinos should vote their party line. And it's this kind of hubris, you know, where they think that these people have no agency to make up their own minds about the issues that they vote upon. It is this kind of hubris that is going to give Trump another 4 years. Because Trump is up there saying, fuck you, you can't tell me what to do. Even when I wasn't president, you couldn't tell me what the fuck to do. And that's the America I love. That's the America Johnny Rotten loves. But the simple truth of the matter is that punk rockers eventually have to grow up. And even Johnny Rotten grows up and his punk rock stance shifts to, I got a Roth IRA, mate. Fuck all the capital gains taxes, right? I hurt my throat. I'm going to wet my whistle. I'm sorry about that. My Johnny Rotten voice is pretty punk rock. Guess what? It's Bible story time. It's Bible story time. Now, here's what I always loved about Jesus coming to Jerusalem, as is outlined in Matthew chapter 21 and Mark chapter 11. It's because it's pretty gangster when Jesus came to Jerusalem. First of all, Jesus' crew stole a donkey for Jesus to ride. Yeah, they told the owners, like, oh, it's for the Lord, you know, and then, oh, okay, I guess if it's for the Lord, you know, who am I to stand in the way of that? So they stole this donkey for Jesus to ride, and he rode into Jerusalem on this donkey, or possibly a colt, I don't know, depending upon the translation. So he rode into Jerusalem, and all the people, they laid down carpets, they cut down palms to lay in the road as he rode into town. All the while they were shouting, Hosanna, son of David, Jesus is the GOAT, PIMP, West Side Jerusalem for life, that kind of thing. And he looked around, he went into Jerusalem, he looked around in the temples, and he found a bunch of people buying and selling inside the temple, and J-Dog was pissed. All right, he started overturning tables, driving people out. He said that it is written that the temple is a house of prayer, but they have turned it into a den of thieves. Then he went out to Bethany to turn in because it was getting pretty late. And Jesus must have still been pissed the next morning, because when he saw the fig tree the next morning, he scoured it extensively, searching for figs. And finding none, Jesus cursed the tree, so it would never bear fruit again. Jesus was somewhat pissy when he arrived to Jerusalem, eh? Or you could say that the fig tree is possibly a metaphor, or is it a simile? A metaphor for the temple in Jerusalem. For what good is a fig tree that does not bear figs? Or what good is a temple if it is not kept holy? The church leaders challenged Jesus' authority, and he told some parables and stuff like that. But the point of the matter is that Jesus probably pissed off a bunch of merchants, all right, coming into the temple on that first day after everyone was screaming his praises as he came into town. And we know that he probably pissed off these merchants, and we know that he definitely pissed off the church leaders. And we all know how this particular trip to Jerusalem turns out for Jesus. But damn, what an entrance. All right, 15 minutes in. And I'm going to kill another 14 minutes on this one topic that I want to talk about. I was thinking about my niece when she grows up. And I was thinking that maybe one day she'll come to me and say, I'm thinking about joining the Navy. Or I'm thinking about joining the Army, Marine Corps, something like that, when she comes of age. And so I was thinking about this a little bit, and so my answer would be no, 100 times no. Do not join the military. Get a trade. Do something. And it's a long path to why I have to say that to my niece. It's like why I would not want my niece to join the military. And that path is I talked a couple weeks ago about an all-female firefighter crew. And how I want somebody who can actually rescue me, somebody who's physically capable of rescuing me, and some 120-pound girl isn't going to necessarily be able to carry me out of a burning building. And I have similar concerns when it comes to women in the military, if in a physical danger kind of situation. What that meant for me when I was in the Navy was that if the ship takes a hit and something like that, and like a rack of computer servers, falls on me. I want people in my workspace, people who are other shipmates, who are physically capable of pulling a server rack off of me in a dire situation like that. And if I worked with a girl who was, had to do different push-ups than me or less push-ups than me because of her gender, I don't necessarily think that I'd be safe if I was the one who was clumsy enough to stand that close to the toppling server rack. And when it comes to like combat, I mean, it's less of a problem, I think, in a place like the Air Force and the Navy, because it's few and far between when Navy sailors take casualties, and most of the people who take casualties in the Navy are like special operators, like SEALs and EOD and stuff like that. But it is rare when something like the USS Cole incident happens, because trying to tackle the U.S. Navy is a daunting task for any nation on this earth. That's why I joined the Navy, because we are badass on the oceans. And so if you're in a warfighting situation, I think it's particularly more important to have people who meet the physical standards that are required to serve in a forward position. All right. It's one thing being in the Navy or in the Air Force. It's another thing if you're in a combat role, and if you need to carry a fellow soldier, and it's just you, and just you have to carry it. Yeah, they have litters and stuff like that. You can have double up on a person if you need to carry somebody, but you need somebody who can pull their weight, quite literally. And so I have that kind of problem when it comes to female serving in the military. It's like, I think that it's less important in, more administrative kind of war fighting like the Navy and the Air Force than it is, I think it's more important in combat roles. That being said, there's a whole other issue. All right. Because I've seen plenty of intelligent women who can do the jobs, had plenty of, officers, chiefs, senior petty officers and so forth, who are excellent at their jobs. They know their jobs. And, and when it comes to the Navy and Air Force and stuff like that, it's more about technical expertise than your warfighting capabilities. And so, but the whole other issue, other than, the physical requirements, is the fact that women are outnumbered in the military like something like 80-1. It is ridiculous how many men there are to women. All right. And so what that means is that women in the military have dick in their face constantly. Dudes hitting on them. Constantly dudes hitting on them, because the dudes are surrounded by dudes all the time. If there's one woman, in your class or in your, or on your ship, it gets nuts. It can get crazy. There were there are jokes that sailors, airmen, and soldiers, Marines say when they're overseas at a duty location, and there's a female who's acting all up like hoity-toity. What's the phrase I should use? Her head up her own ass, just thinks she's the shit, and she's really not. You say to her, he's like, you are a plane ticket away from ugly, meaning that, I can fly to anywhere other than this duty station. This happens in places like Diego Garcia, which are quite isolated, and it's just solely this military town. And it's like, I can get on a plane, fly to someplace, and you're instantly a 3 again, and that would happen. You could have like, a ship. When a ship has like 500 people on it, let's say, just picking a number, a ship that has 500 people on it, and you're talking about 25 women, maybe. All right. Those chicks constantly have dicks in their face, guys trying to get with them. They could be married. They could be married to someone on the ship, and people would still be hitting on them. All right. People would know, you'd know that they were married and still hit on them. And succeed. And that's the sad part. All right. Additionally, you talk about military towns. Military towns. It's kind of the same situation. Everyone's kind of very promiscuous, and there's so much dude around that if you're a female around, that they're they think it's like easy pickings. A bunch of horny soldiers and sailors. You're the only woman in the room. Easy pickings. I don't know how many dudes' wives have hit on me that I served with. Guys that I served with, wives hit on me. Seriously. And acted like I was weird for thinking it's immoral. I'm not going to throw out any names, but Jesus Christ. And that's what that society is like. That's what the culture of the military is like. And I don't want, additionally, and on top of this outnumbering, is that there's always the risk of abuse and harassment. And it happens. I have talked to many women when I was serving in the Navy who talked about harassment and rapes and stuff like that. Horrible things that can happen because of this if you're outnumbered. It's sad as hell. And, there's a lot of guys who have been in the military who are bitter because, they couldn't get laid, like me, because my only options were other sailors' wives. There's no such thing as a single girl within 25 miles of Norfolk. All right, or as I call it, no fuck, because I couldn't get laid. I was just one of many, and the girls had their pick of the litter. The pick of the litter. You know, threes getting married to tens. Dudes who are tens getting married to threes. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to just rate people arbitrarily, but I mean, seriously, that's what it seemed like. Just because you were the only girl around who on the ship, on deployment, you knocked her up and you figured you'd do the right thing as a man should and married her, you know. Additionally, you have women who would get pregnant to avoid deployment. And you can imagine that, you know, there are some unscrupulous women in the world. Let's just say that. And they would realize it's like, oh, my ship's going to deploy in August, say, and then we're going a 6-month deployment to the Gulf. So I'll get knocked up sometime in June, maybe July. And so she doesn't have to go. And then she gets to go to a shore station billet that, you know, some other sailor who spent time at sea hoping for that shore station so he could deal with all the problems with his family because he's never home. No, she takes that billet away just because she got pregnant to avoid a deployment. That's rare, but I'm sure it does happen. There are some unscrupulous women out there. And so when it comes to this kind of society, you know, and wanting it for my niece, it's like I didn't want it for the women I knew in the Navy. I thought the way people treated them socially, it's more socially. Professionally, it's a very different story. Professionally, they are treated professionally. But socially, when you're mingling socially, whether you're in port or you're in, you know, in at a port of call, you know, they were treated differently, like more like objects, and that frustrated me. And it frustrated me that, you know, because they got their pick of the litter, they frequently weren't picking guys that were good for them as people. All right. Additionally, I'm an ugly guy, and I understand why I never got laid. But I mean, it's not something I want for my niece. It's not something I want for her life, and I don't want her to be ever in a situation where she feels like she's worth more than she is. I love her to pieces, and I think she's going to go very far in life because she's so wonderful. But I don't want her to end up being a 5 and thinking she's a 10 just because she's stationed in Diego Garcia and then grows this attitude of better than everybody just because she was the hottest girl in town for 4 years. I don't think that's a good experience for her. I'd rather her do something like a trade school, you know, college, if I can get her head right before she went, you know, because I mean, I remember I ran into this girl who graduated high school not too long ago, about a year ago, and I said, so you're going to college? And I give her this look, so you're going to college? And she goes, yeah, I'm going to college. And it's like, where are you going? She goes, Liberty University. I was like, oh, you might actually get an education. And she was like, why do you say that? And it's like, well, because, I mean, there's very few colleges that actually educate you in things you need to be educated upon. You know, apparently, like a lot of what people are putting out in colleges these days is nothing but this critical theory stuff like that. Horrible nonsense that, you know, has no bearing on anything whatsoever, and it's a waste of time to even study. And they're basically training little socialist Nazis. Is what they're doing in colleges. So if my niece came to me and said, I want to join the military, I'd say, please don't. Please don't. I don't want to come back and hear these horrible horror stories. It's like you got held down by 3 guys or something like that. I don't want to hear some horrible horror story where, you know, a chief petty officer was withholding a promotion because you wouldn't blow him or something like that. I don't want to hear anything like that coming from my niece, because I would want to go down to the Navy. I'd want to go down and find this chief petty officer that held her promotion, and I'd want to strangle him with my hands. And I don't want to be a murderer. And the only thing I could think of murdering somebody for is my niece, and I love her that much. So that's just my little 2 cents, or 14 minutes, or 13 minutes, as it were, of me ranting about why women probably shouldn't go in the military or be cops or firefighters. You can clip that little bit and say, there, he's sexist. You can take that little clip if you like. But you got to be a patron to get the full video. Gotcha. I just want that $3. Then you can make fun of me all you want. Patreon.com/ShockMonkeyRadio. All right, let's go ahead and get into the news worth knowing. Imagine a stinger in your mind. Let's get into the news here. So, a promoter for Portland's Day of Rage wants to abolish colonial systems, a report says. The Twitter handle Generational Resistance, which promoted Sunday night's Day of Rage in Portland that resulted in the toppling of 2 statues and damage to several buildings, said its ultimate goal is to, quote, decolonize society by working to abolish colonial systems rooted in racism, a report said. The Oregonian newspaper wrote a lengthy article about the group that started mentioning the protest a day earlier. The paper said the city is having difficulty getting a grip on protesters because social media allows them to organize quickly and coordinate. The report said that one of the instructions on Sunday was that videos and photos were not allowed. Andy Ngo, a journalist who has been documenting the unrest in the city, American journalistic hero Andy Ngo, he posted images of Sunday's destruction on Twitter. Ngo posted a video of protesters toppling the statue of Teddy Roosevelt, which depicted the former president riding on horseback. Of course, he's always on a horse, isn't he? The video showed a rope tied around the statue, and protesters could be heard cheering when the statue shifted. One person could be heard saying, F all you colonizers, every one of you that is against Black Lives Matter can F the F off. That's very, they have a very diverse vocabulary, this person. After toppling the statues, the crowd smashed windows at the Oregon Historical Society and later moved on to Portland State University campus public safety office. The paper said the protest, which resulted in 3 people being taken into custody, was billed online as Indigenous Peoples' Day of Rage. It took place the evening before Columbus Day. The paper said it reached out to Generational Resistance members and was issued a statement through its Twitter handle Monday night that read, quote, we stand to decolonize ourselves and decolonize society by working to abolish colonial systems rooted in racism and build a community rooted in liberation. President Trump took to Twitter on Monday and posted, quote, the radical left fools in Portland don't want any help from real law enforcement, which will provide instantaneously, period. Vote, exclamation point. I wish that dude would quit tweeting. Anyway, so these people, they pulled down statues of both Abraham Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt in Portland because I think they're assholes. And so, what is it that they want? They said like colonization like 8 times. Hold on. Let's see. They wanted to decolonize society by working to abolish colonial systems rooted in racism. I don't know. What are those things? Those tri-corner hats? It's like, those are way out of style. The colonial era is over. Okay. And so, I don't know what you're fighting against fiction right now, if you ask me. It's like, colonialism doesn't exist anymore. You can argue that it exists in places like, like Iraq. All right? It certainly isn't here. All right? So you're fiction. This is a fictional thing that you're fighting against. It's fictional. Decolonize society. What do you mean you want people to leave Earth? Decolonize society? Is that what you mean? To colonize means to populate in some synonymous way. So does that mean we should all leave Earth? There's still plenty of good resources down here. All right? You're insane. You are insane. You are LARPing. All the convention centers are closed down, and so you just want to tear down statues. You're a bunch of asshole LARPers, Portland. There is no racism anymore. The SPLC kind of needs to shut its doors. Because when these racists that you're talking about, these Klan members that you think are everywhere, you're talking about 16, 20 guys in your state and maybe 300 globally. All right? And they're usually very easy to spot. And the best way to counter bad ideas is to give them light. Let the madman on the corner shout so that he can, all his ignorance is on full display. I think it says in the Bible, do not be like the fool who prays on the street corner, for he has received his reward in full. I think that's somewhere in the Bible. I could be wrong. Freaking terrorists, domestic terrorists. You understand that, like, after, like, the threat of, like, Al-Qaeda went away, the word terrorist is, like, disappeared from the news, even though there is terrorism happening. Anyway, let's go on to the next story. Johnson Grassley pressed FBI for McCabe texts, called the delay unacceptable. Now, I don't know if you've been following this story, but you should be, because Trump has demanded the declassification and release of all records related to the Trump-Russia probe. So top Senate Republicans investigating the origin of the FBI's Trump-Russia probe are pressing the Bureau to produce all text messages belonging to the former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, calling the delay unacceptable. In a letter to FBI Director Christopher Wray, Senate Homeland Security Committee Chairman Ron Johnson, and Senate Financial Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley demanded that the FBI turn over the documents, noting that their production would be responsive to the subpoena issued by Johnson's committee in August. Quote, as you know, on August 6, 2020, the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee subpoenaed the FBI for all records related to the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, which requires that records actually be produced to the committee, not merely made available for review in a reading room, they wrote. We have waited nearly 70 days to receive these text messages, and when records were actually produced, we received only 8% of what we know exists. They added, it is simply unacceptable that we have waited so long to receive so little. Johnson and Grassley said the text messages belonging to McCabe that the FBI did produce, quote, include notable information that is highly relevant to several aspects of the committee's oversight efforts. One aspect the committee is investigating involves records made public last week by Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe, who declassified documents that revealed former CIA Director John Brennan briefed former President Obama on Hillary Clinton's purported, quote, plan to tie then-candidate Donald Trump to Russia as, quote, a means of distracting the public from her use of a private email server ahead of the 2016 presidential campaign. The documents, which were first reported and exclusively obtained by Fox News, included Brennan's handwritten notes, which were taken after he briefed Obama on the intelligence the CIA received, and a CIA memo which revealed that officials referred the matter to the former FBI Director James Comey and the former FBI Special Agent Peter Strzok for potential investigative action. Quote, we have made a public commitment to determine and reveal the full extent of official investigative and intelligence action taken by federal officials against the Trump campaign, its presidential transition, and into the administration, the senators wrote, adding that information has already been made public that, quote, reveals what might be the most outrageous abuse of power in U.S. history against a presidential candidate and a sitting president. They added the American people deserve full transparency, and they've waited entirely too long, almost 4 years in some instances, for answers. In light of that history, it is astounding that the FBI can claim to need more time to identify and produce responsive records. All right, so you know where this is going, right? You understand where this is going. The FBI knows where this is going. So I'm sure they're just trying to delete some emails, just like Hillary did. All right. And I think that this is truly one of the most outrageous things that's happened in U.S. government. I believe that organizations such as CIA, FBI, and any contractors related to DOD or any other government agency should remain neutral politically. All right? Now, here's the thing. I worked for DOD. I worked in the intelligence community. All right? And even in early 2000s, I was looked down upon because of my conservative views. You know, had some asshole Democrat who kept like logging into my terminal, see what I was typing, and would yell at me because of the things I was typing. And so I understood that intelligence agencies and government agencies were starting to skew left. And when it comes to like the Obama administration, going to the FBI, your taxpayer-funded Federal Bureau of Investigation, going to them and telling them to investigate or create some sort, whatever they did, a political opponent, that is highly illegal. That is highly illegal and the most egregious abuse of power. And guess who did it? Democrats. I'm not surprised. They think we're evil. We just know they're wrong. I think Charles Krauthammer is cited as saying that. And so because they think we're evil, they think all of every means that they use to defeat us is justified. Because they think that we're playing these dirty tricks too. It's like, no, Republicans are not scared of the virus. They're going to go to the polls and vote. They're not scared. You know, all the Democrats are scared in their houses, wiping sanitizer all over their votes and getting them invalidated. Did you hear that story? Oh, go look that up. I should have used that in the news because that's hilarious. Anyway, so this is big news that's coming up. The timing is a bit suspect in terms of, I mean, they said it has been going on for 70 days, but even 70 days ago is kind of like close to an election when this kind of information comes out. So I wonder if maybe like Trump sat on this for a little bit and waited for this year to bring it out and just, I didn't count on the Rona. You never count on the Rona. Nobody expects the Spanish. No, nobody expects the Rona. Anyway, lock her up. That was my comment on that news story when I posted it. Excuse me. All right, let's go to the next story. California Republicans refuse to remove ballot boxes, slam state's $35 million Team Biden contract. California's top election official reportedly hired Democratic operatives to run a $35 million get-out-the-vote effort. The California Republican Party responded Monday to criticism over unofficial ballot drop-off boxes in counties with highly competitive U.S. House races, arguing that state law allows ballot harvesting, while also slamming a $35 million contract the state's top election official awarded to a Team Biden public relations firm. California Secretary of State Alex Padilla, a Democrat, had his legal chief counsel send Republicans a letter on Monday ordering them to remove unofficial ballot drop-off boxes from churches, gun shops, and other locations in Fresno, Orange, and Los Angeles counties by Thursday. Hector Barajas, a spokesman for the California Republican Party, told Fox News that the Secretary of State's actions is just a deflection from the mounting criticism from giving a non-budgeted $35 million get-out-the-vote contract to a Team Biden PR firm, which is also receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars to oppose Republican candidates in targeted California districts. Last week, the California State Comptroller, rejected the $35 million contract from Padilla. $35 million contract Padilla entered with SKD Knickerbocker, a Washington, D.C. based public affairs firm. Wait a minute. If it's Knickerbocker, you should be in New York, like in Manhattan. Anyway, D.C. based public affairs firm. In late August to run a Vote Safe California campaign urging people to vote during the pandemic. Anita Dunn, the firm's managing director, is a senior strategist for Biden's presidential campaign. SKD Knickerbocker's work for Biden is highlighted on its website with a headline saying the company is proud to be a part of Team Biden. The state controller said Padilla lacked any budget authority to spend the millions of dollars in taxpayer funds on the voter outreach program, and the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Foundation sent Padilla a letter on October 6th demanding that he stop any further spending regarding the illegal contract. When the contract was first initiated weeks ago, Jessica Millen Patterson, chairwoman of the California Republican Party, argued that it screamed of a conflict of interest. But Padilla's office said politics played no role in the companies where considered, the finalists selected, or the eventual decision. In regards to the unofficial ballot boxes, Barajas said Republicans would continue their ballot harvesting program, adding that Democrat anger is overblown when state law allows organizations, volunteers, or campaign workers to collect completed ballots and drop them off at polling places or election offices. I'm going to stop reading this article. You see what happens is like everyone kind of gets a little crazy. In California, it's just a little bit crazier than everywhere else in America. And so if you keep one-upping each other in this crazy game, you're just gonna go into crazy land, California. And so, I'm just saying, like, California Republicans are a little crazy too, because they're Californians. And so, watch out, Nashville. Ben Shapiro's coming. Watch. Where's Joe Rogan? He's in Austin. Watch out, Austin. Joe Rogan's there. All right, it may be a short show. I got 3 more stories. So let's talk about these racist Democrats in New York. So New York City Orthodox Jewish community protests new state-mandated coronavirus lockdowns. restrictions are broken down into 3 color-coded categories. Hundreds of members of the Burr Park Orthodox community took to the streets Tuesday night, defying orders to disperse and lighting a fire in protest of the new state-mandated restrictions imposed on area synagogues, schools, and non-essential businesses over a COVID-19 surge. One large crowd huddled closely together in the corner of 50th Street and 15th Avenue at about 9 p.m. as community activist Heshi Tischler ripped Governor Cuomo and Mayor Bill de Blasio over the order that shuts down schools completely and limits houses of worship to 10 people in certain COVID-19 hotspots. Much of Borough Park is subject to those measures, the most restrictive, which also shutters non-essential businesses. The level of restrictions, broken down into 3 color-coded categories, are guided by coronavirus diagnosis data. Quote, "It's called civil disobedience. We can fight back," Tischler told the crowd, tearing up his face mask. "Do not allow them to torture you or scare you," he said, referring to the elected officials. The closures must be made no later than Friday, though a spokesman for de Blasio tweeted that they would likely begin Thursday and run for at least 2 weeks. Councilman Kalman Yeager later showed up at another protest on 13th Avenue, according to Borough Park News. There, the lawmaker told the crowd, "We are not going to be deprived of the right that we have in America, like everyone else in America, to the right to observe our religion." The protest swarmed in numbers later in the night, with demonstrators shutting down 13th Avenue to vehicular traffic. Shouldn't do that, guys. Things also turned unruly when the crowd lit a rubbish fire after midnight at the intersection of 46th Street and 13th Avenue and chased away 2 sheriff's deputies who responded. You shouldn't do that. The defiant crowd chanted Jewish Lives Matter and held their ground. At about 1:30 a.m., FDNY firefighters and cops put out the flames, to the dismay of the protesters. Good. You don't want fires in the city. Earlier in the night, Yeager was among 4 local Jewish lawmakers who released a joint statement slamming Governor Cuomo over the edict. Quote, "We are appalled by Governor Cuomo's words and actions today. He has chosen to pursue a scientifically and constitutionally questionable shutdown of our communities," said in a statement from Yeager, State Senator Simcha Felder, Assemblyman Simcha Eckenstein, and Councilman Chaim Deutsch. Quote, "His administration's utter lack of coordination and communication with local officials has been an ongoing issue since the start of the pandemic, and particularly recently as we face this uptick." The lawmaker said that even though they represent COVID-19 hotspot neighborhoods, the Cuomo administration has left in the dark leading up to Tuesday's decision. Has been left in the dark, I guess, leading up to Tuesday's decision. Also brought up by the legislators was Cuomo's choice to display PowerPoint images of New York's Jewish community gathering en masse during his Monday press briefing. Quote, "Governor Cuomo's choice to single out a particular religious group, complete with a slideshow of photos to highlight his point, was outrageous. His language was dangerous and divisive and left the implication that Orthodox Jews alone are responsible for rising COVID cases in New York State," the elected official said. So here's the thing: it's like not a whole lot of people are talking about what's going on with the Jewish people in New York proper, and so these Black Lives Matter protests, when they kicked off, that was at a time when they were locking up playgrounds where these Jewish kids played, locking up their synagogues, and it seemed like they're unfairly targeting this Jewish community. I know, I've been in New York a couple of times, and I understand that there's a lot of people who dislike the Hasidim. If you don't know, that the Hasidics are the Hasidim are in New York. They have little enclaves around New York, and so and they're because they're codified. They wear all the trappings and so forth, and they all look dressed the same in many ways, and it's very weird in the capital of fashion that New York is. To see somebody who lives a simpler life like that. And so they're very much disliked by a lot of people, and I find that kind of disgusting. And so, but you see, when these Black Lives Matter protests kicked off, that was okay. That was okay, but these people couldn't go to their synagogues. People couldn't go to churches. People couldn't go to their funerals. Your grandma died. Sorry, you can't be around as they lower her in the ground. Why? Because Black Lives Matter can do whatever the fuck it wants. And that's kind of the problem. That's kind of the problem here. It's not necessarily that you could say that they were unfairly targeted for being Jewish. Absolutely, you can make that argument. However, it's more the issue is like some things, are allowed to be, to skirt the rules, while other things are not. Good things that people should be doing, like going to church or going to your synagogue, that is not allowed. But burning stuff in the streets, that's safe for the COVID. And that's been the issue. That's been the complaint the entire time. Is like for somehow there's a different set of the rules for these leftist ideologies. It's like, yeah, everyone should wear a mask. You should maintain social distancing. You can't go to church. Can't go to synagogue. You can't go to funerals and stuff like that. But Black Lives Matter. You go ahead. Keep going. You can go. Just reeks of racism. Reeks of bias. Reeks of time to vote you out. All right. Got about 10 minutes left. This mic is just not standing up. So here we go. Let's go into this last two stories here. Tourists return stolen artifacts from Pompeii after claiming to suffer a curse. Quote, I was young and stupid. Woman claims she suffered from breast cancer, financial difficulties since taking the items. Canadian woman has decided to return a handful of artifacts she stole from Pompeii in 2005 in the hopes of ridding herself and her family of a curse that has allegedly plagued her ever since. The woman, who identified herself only as Nicole in a letter accompanying the stolen items, claims she was young and stupid at the time and wanted to have a piece of history that no one could have. But after suffering through 2 bouts of cancer and financial difficulties, she no longer wants anything to do with them. Quote, I just want to shake off the curse that this has fallen on me and my family, she wrote in a letter sent to a Pompeii area travel agency, who in turn shared it with the local police per Italy's Il Messaggero. I don't think he knows how to pronounce it, but anyway. Quote, please accept these artifacts. This is from her letter. Please accept these artifacts so that you do the right thing for the mistake I made. I am so sorry. One day I will return your beautiful country to your beautiful country and apologize in person, Nicole added. Included among the items she returned were 2 mosaic tiles, 2 fragments of amphora jugs, and a piece of a wall. Nicole further claimed that she had a few friends who stole additional artifacts during the 2005 trip, Alliston and Kimberly, and she urged them too to send back the items. Police later confirmed that a second letter, along with more artifacts, did indeed arrive from Canada, with a letter signed from Alliston and Kimberly G., according to Canada's CTV News. The two expressed remorse for their actions and asked for forgiveness. They also wished that the souls lost at Pompeii would be able to rest in peace, the outlet report. I'm gonna explain why I'm laughing here in a second. A representative for the Archaeological Park of Pompeii further confirmed that to Fox News that officials have received around 100 similar packages over the years from people who feel remorse after taking home items they found at the ruins. Quote, for several years, the Archaeological Park of Pompeii has been receiving letters from visitors who, on occasion of their visit, have taken small objects, and we're talking about mosaic tiles, small shards, stones, pieces of plaster, lapilli, that are of little value, but part of a unique archaeological heritage, and that they have decided to, after years, to return, claiming they have derived only bad luck from the act. The spokesperson confirmed in an email. The spokesperson added that several such letters and packages are currently being showcased in an exhibit at the park, although Nicole's letter, as well as her friends, cannot be displayed as they are turned over to the police, who kept them as evidence. Oh no, maybe you shouldn't go back to Pompeii. The artifacts, meanwhile, were returned, but obviously they cannot be replaced in the ruins because their precise origin is not known. The Archaeological Park of Pompeii had reopened to tourists in May of 2020 after closing months before the outbreak of the coronavirus. The ruins, deemed a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1997, along with the archaeological areas in Herculaneum and Torre as... You know that one. had also just finished undergoing a $113 million renovation right before the coronavirus pandemic hit. So it's probably been good to go. So why was I laughing at that story? It's like, because curses aren't real. They're not. They're not real. You didn't get cancer because you stole these things. Okay. That's not what it is. I mean, it's cute that you have a little guilt. It's cute that you're superstitious like that, and you probably wrote your friends and say, "Hey, you probably should send those back because they're fucking cursed," and they believed you. And so I think that's hilarious. I think that people's belief and stuff like that. Things like superstitions, like curses and stuff like. I mean, do you think that the people who died in Pompeii, what they wanted to do with their afterlife was to, stop shoplifters? You think that's what people, dead people do in the afterlife? Is they they curse thieves? What, if you had like power over the living in any way, why would you do like such a misdemeanor? No, I had the kitchen arranged just so, and you came and took the tile. So it's ridiculous to think that this had any bearing on your life. I think it's cool that you returned it. I don't care the reason, because you're crazy. You're crazy, probably. So that's a little funny story. And let's do a heartwarming story to end up the show on. Girl, 4 years old, starts making Christmas care packages for needy children after having a bad dream. Pippa Jackson was inspired after having a bad dream about needy kids having no presents to open on Christmas. So the 4-year-old has launched an initiative to collect Christmas presents for deprived children after she had a bad dream about some missing out. Kind-hearted Pippa Jackson has set herself the challenge of making 200 care packages for children who otherwise would go without during the festive period. In each one, she puts a present, some coloring pencils, and a hat, a scarf, and some gloves to help keep them warm. Pippa from St. Austell in Cornwall, England, was spurred on after having a bad dream about children having no presents to open on Christmas morning. Her mom, Katie Jackson, 23, who is helping her with the project, said Pippa is getting a bit of help with her project too. Quote, Pippa is currently making Christmas parcels, oh, that's right, they're British. Pippa is currently making Christmas parcels. I'm sorry, I'm an asshole. By receiving donations, and next week we will be making decorations as well, Jackson said. The decorations are to sell, and all the money that she raises will go towards buying presents for the deprived children. Jackson confirmed that her daughter was encouraged to start the project after having a dream that some children wouldn't be able to open presents on Christmas Day, and she wanted to help. She's very kind-hearted, and she has a golden heart, Jackson said. She wants to help anyone in need, and we are going to go to some women's shelters, orphanages, that kind of thing, anywhere where we can find children to help. Jackson and Pippa are currently spending their evenings putting together the parcels, some of the contents which have been kindly donated to the family. Jackson, who has another daughter, Zara, 2 years old, added, in the parcels there will be bits and bobs, little stocking fillers, funny bits of whoopee cushion, funny bits like whoopee cushions, pens, coloring pencils, hats, scarves, and gloves, just in case they need them. Whatever we can get our hands on, really. The care packages will also be separated in ages and boys and girls, Jackson added. We're hoping to make 200. That's what Pippa said. I got my work cut out for me. So if we get enough donations, if we can buy enough toys, if we have enough, we'll go above and beyond. The donations are going well so far, so I have some stuff from a few local shops and more will be coming soon, I think, next week. Well, you have a... This girl is thinking long term. And you know what you know what's great about this story is the fact that this girl woke up in October with a bad dream because she's already thinking about Christmas. And I think that that's wonderful about how 4-year-old girls are. And so she wakes up but smart enough to understand the idea of poverty and so forth. It's such a wonderful thing. It's such a wonderful impulse. And so it's I'm just in awe that a girl this young has that kind of impulse, and how people can get pretty much any human being, any adult can understand that impulse, can understand backing a girl with this idea. So absolutely, go look up this girl, Pippa Jackson, search for her, find if there's a way you can donate some toys. I know, I'm an American show, and so go find her, see if there's any way that you can donate for the needy children. that this brave young girl wanted to do for somebody else. And I think she finally gets Christmas at 4 years old. And it's like, that's the best thing you can do for Christmas, is give a gift like that to somebody who needs it. And so I just like to end things on a happy note here on Shock Monkey Radio. I want to remind you again to go over to Patreon. Go over to patreon.com/shockmonkeyradio. Become a patron. You can get access to all the video content behind the scenes. You could also cash at me using hashtag ShockMonkeyRadio, all one word. Also, buy my books. Search for them on Amazon.com. They're available for digital download only. Search for the author, Scott L. Robbins, with 2 T's and 2 B's. Got the Exit 13 series. I got the Ravings of a Madman, and I got the Bunny Years and memoir, story about a superhero. So, yeah, this is the end of Shock Monkey Radio. I'm your host, the Madman, and I love you.